iOS. Just to go back to, this was the board that I put in last year. So live translations in FaceTime. So finally we're getting that. It's actually interesting to look back on last year very, very quickly to see what actually happened or not. So voice messages summarized. We got a lot of summaries over here. I think when it's try to summarize things without context and just notifications, I actually don't find it useful after a year of using it. I would like to see voice messages summarized, and also just use a different model. WhatsApp, and whatever you guys are using, if you can get Whisper, proper Whisper API, if you can get that model on your foundation models as good as Whisper, or at least whatever OpenAI has, if you get as close to Whisper, and that can be on device, put that everywhere. I have to see what it was called, but you do have a model that does voice to text. That should go over here straight away in WhatsApp. Voice message summarized. Things like on-device video transcription. That never happened. We had voice memo transcription down here. I actually ended up, in my design, it actually looked very, very similar to what they ended up coming up with. They just, all these extra like prompts and stuff that are here. Okay, you can't even really see them, but I put in like prompts and stuff over there. They obviously didn't come in, but transcription, voice to text, put everywhere, get a much better model. The transcription on WhatsApp is absolutely horrendous. Really misses half the stuff. So that's important. Edit audio like a text. Yeah, they haven't even tried that. So we'll jump over that, but that's like a descript type of like concept. That would be cool. I actually have been having this conversation over the last couple of weeks because of LayerOS, but to me, what I really would have liked to see, there's a few things I really would have liked to see. Build shortcuts with natural language. Siri, or a Siri shortcuts builder with Siri GPT is massive. And complex node-based automations, things like that. Those are very, very big. But one thing I would like to really see, and I think this would go in the direction of LayerOS, I'm not going to go too much into it because this isn't a video about LayerOS, but it's this, here, let me put you up in the middle. Live transcription. It's this idea that there are multiple, even first-party apps, like I'm not even going to say like third-party, first-party apps that have very similar concepts, like notes and pages, or voice memos, GarageBand, and there's a few other things. But like the concept is like we've got like baby kind of apps and then like the grown-up version of the apps. And what would be really cool as we're going this direction, yes, this is kind of a LayerOS kind of concept, but what would be really cool is if we were able to get to this world where that we flowed through the direction rather than like limiting us and then having like different apps for, you know, the easier ones and the harder ones. Less features, more features. Okay, let's go back to this very quickly because I could be here forever. Games, yawn, really don't care about this. I understand why Apple's pushing it because of Metal and because of Apple Silicon. They try to push it every year, wasn't interested. Widgets and CarPlay, yeah, okay, cool. You're bringing widgets everywhere, great. Widgets have always been this concept of like this small little app that you can just chuck everywhere. So like chucking it in your office, as like your Spotify app where your speaker is, like those kind of things. I've done concept videos of those of like what, like music control should pop up when you look at the source. So widgets would be an interesting thing just to have them like hovering on top of it or next to it or things like that. But we'll go into that another time. Widgets in CarPlay. I'm more interested in CarPlay Ultra. So I didn't find that as interesting, but great. The foundation model access, that I'm very, very interested in. Not even though Apple's foundation model doesn't actually seem to be competitive when all these other people are releasing these crazy, crazy new models. And Sam Altman had like this talk where he's saying that the future of this is not that you're getting massive, massive models. Rather, the reasoning and the logic and everything should be a very, very tiny, lightweight piece that just lives over your data. And that's really what an operating system should be. And that's where I go into LayerOS and this kind of concept. But if I were to bring it to the Apple operating system, that's what it should be. All my data stays here. All the things that you've done with Spotlight and everything, yeah, those should be unearthed using natural language and using agents, things like that, whatever. We'll get into that as we get to Mac or when we go into LayerOS. But the reasoning should be updated constantly, and it should be a very, very small layer. And having the different models of like the image generation and the video generators and the speech to text, like the visual intelligence, all these things are these lightweight monitors that kind of just exist above your data and your context and your personality, and that's wrapped around the operating system. So I'm happy to see that that you have the access to it. I'm quite interested in in shortcuts, and this is I'll go back to last year, but this was like this idea of here build shortcuts with natural language. They didn't do that. That was like the one thing that I would love them to do. But they did show off shortcuts. Now, shortcuts builder, so they don't have shortcuts builder with Siri GPT because that was like, again, using natural language, but being able to type it out. But they did make things a little bit easier. Let me see if I have it here. No, I have it on the iPad one, or Apple has it on their iPad one, or even their macOS. Oh no, I have this screenshot that I put in. So just this idea of being able to use the iCloud private model, let's go next to it. So this is like the only reason I like to do these videos, like visually I can show you and I can even put points around the place. But everything else about it is just like annoying. I definitely want to play around with this and see how it works, how it works as an extension or a shortcut feature, or can it be built into a Mac? Like for me, like I've said multiple times, like you have over here, is I want to build a Brainstream, right? So I want to be able to do naturally and say this is all the things I want in a Brainstream, but then I want to be able to go into that and have it multiple. So like shortcuts builder, like I want a thumbnail of it. Now the thumbnail is based on all the information. So like you have over here, the node-based automations, this is what I would love to be able to build. Now they show it in not a node-based, they show it in their regular way of doing it, where they're inputting piece of information, doing things. It's very linear. It's not node-based. I could very much see this go to node-based. They've also built their own like kind of canvas type of thing here. I see that as kind of working in freeform, but regardless of that, like that already also is going to LayerOS and this idea of being in a being in like an infinite canvas and building your layers on top of that as you build the interface, whatever, that's a whole other concept. But the fact that they're doing this, where you can pull in recordings, pull in text, and it's you're able to transcribe it yourself. I need to see this transcribe feature because I tried to do this with Brainstreams like a year ago, and it just couldn't do the videos because I was doing 10 minutes and it was coming out to be like 2 gig of file, and the shortcuts, at least on the iPhone, were limiting you to like a minute. So I would have to like encode it and then place it here, things like that. So I'm very interested in what does this transcribe do, where you're taking it, what are the limitations? But if you can do it on device and you're getting something as good as Whisper, and then you can pass it through prompts, like you can grab the text, pass it through prompts, and then have those prompts, deal with things. So in mind, the reason I have node-based is like when you bring it in, so either you drop a video or a whole folder of files. Like once it grabs the transcript, as you see on the first one, then it goes, there's a few things. So one of them is summarizes the topics. One of them over here, like you create a post, and inside the post, you create the title, the description, the call to action, things like that, designing the thumbnail of the concept of all the text, and then the scheduling and all that. This is like a complex node automation. Now you could do similar type of things on N8N and Zapier, Make.com, like all those things, but on device using this foundation model access, and when Image Playground actually becomes good, where I can give it a whole context, and it can start creating like thumbnails or like parts of a thumbnail for me, that even if I have to bring it together and design it, at least give me like the different parts of the idea around it. Anyways, let's try wrap up iOS so we'll have everything else. Your route in Maps was actually interesting. I worked on this kind of concept for AI in Maps probably like 8 years ago or something. This idea that like people don't use maps in their real cities because they know their route. But just like you have a friend in your car that knows not to tell you the route to leave your city, but he'll start telling you the route on the highway and into his city. The same thing over here. If your maps was intelligent enough to know which parts of the route you know and which parts not, and it shut up for those things, then it could be a lot more, and it learns your routes properly, it still gives you route traffic and the parts of the route that you don't know. It won't tell you the parts of the route you do know. We worked on this quite a long time ago. Live translation everywhere, great. We talked about that. Would like to see that in a lot more places. Text to speech everywhere, and like I have it over here, on-device video transcription, if this can happen to every transcription. It seems like they're putting the models in there, and I think there's an API for it, but would love to see that more. Anyways, that's the end of iOS, and I'll see you guys in the future.